The 9.5-to-1 Aluminator would be an excellent drop-in and go solution for the S550 GT owners out there looking to safely make big power through forced induction using fully forged components along with a lower compression ratio. Now, this engine would also appeal to other generation Mustang owners as well for those same reasons, but would require some supplemental parts to get installed, such as a control pack, cross member, and transmission, just to name a few. Your price point for the low compression option is going to be just south of 10,000 bucks, and the install will get a full-blown 3 out of 3 wrenches on the difficulty meter. As you can imagine, doing an engine swap like this will not exactly be for the novice mechanics out there. So the factory Gen 2 Coyote found in the 2015 through 2017 Mustang was certainly a large step forward compared to the Gen 1 in regards to power holding capabilities. Now, this was thanks largely to the sinter forged connecting rods, but the Gen 2 also featured a superior head design along with a superior camshaft design as well. Now, the Aluminator takes all the good things about the Gen 2 and just reinforces them thanks largely to the fully forged rotating assembly, along with other smaller bits to make this engine capable of holding upwards of 1,000 horsepower or more at the crank. And let's start with that fully forged rotating assembly. Now, the foundation is going to be the standard Mustang GT crank, which is fully forged from the factory, but now attached to that crankshaft will be those burly Manley H-beam connecting rods with the ARP 2000 hardware. Riding on those H-beam rods from Manley will be the Mahle hard anodized forged pistons with their low friction coating and again that lower 9.5-to-1 compression ratio. Now, those standard cast pistons were admittedly one of the weak spots in the stock GT Coyote and would oftentimes either succumb to ringland failure or other failures due to a lean condition or maybe even detonation. Eliminating this weak spot completely with the forged goodies from Mahle, in addition to using that lower compression ratio, will certainly help alleviate some of these issues. Another notorious weak spot with the Coyote is the factory oil pump gears. Well, that has also been addressed here with the Aluminator, as Ford Performance has installed the oil pump used in the drag-specific Cobra Jet. Now, more specifically, loaded within that CJ oil pump is a set of those billet oil pump gears, a must-have when making big horsepower or turning high RPM. But aside from the forged internals and billet oil pump gear set, a lot of this engine will be pretty familiar to the 2015 through 17 GT owners out there. Now, those forged internals are loaded into a production GT aluminum block. However, that block has already been clearanced for a TVS style blower, which means you won't have to do any grinding with this particular Aluminator. Aside from that, the block is also topped off with those production Gen 2 Coyote heads. Again, these heads are superior to the first generation Coyote and flow as good as the CNC ported 2012 through 2013 Boss 302 heads. You're also going to be getting the production 2015 through 2017 bump sticks and Boss 302 valve springs, which are better suited for the lift of the more aggressive Gen 2 cams, while also being able to support more RPM safely. Rounding out these heads, you'll find the Ford Performance Motorcraft plugs, which will be 1 heat range colder than those stock Coyote plugs. Now, these guys are recommended for supercharged applications, along with a gap of 35 thousandths. Topping everything off, you do have the composite intake manifold, as you can see here, and factory 80mm drive-by wire throttle body. Ford also tosses in the engine cover, which isn't shown here, and the rear sump oil pan with an 8-quart capacity. So yes, this engine is essentially complete from oil pan intake manifold, but there are a few things that aren't included worth mentioning. First things first, this engine does not include any accessories such as your alternator, for instance, and therefore will need to be transferred over from your S550. The Aluminator does also not include any clutch, flywheel, or flex plate, in addition to exhaust manifolds, but again, if you plan on dropping this into your S550, all of this shouldn't really be a concern for you. Another thing worth mentioning is that if you want your low oil sensor to function properly in your 2015 and 2016 GT, and you should, then you will need to swap out your oil pan, otherwise you will lose that functionality or feature. Finally, guys, the engine is backed by Ford Performance for a limited 2-year, 24,000-mile warranty if needed. Now, some of you might have noticed that there is also a higher compression version of the Aluminator, 11-to-1 to be exact, available, and according to Ford Performance, that should be used with naturally aspirated applications. Well, there are a large group of people out there that would prefer that higher compression even for forced induction applications. Now, back in the day when you wanted to build a motor to support a lot of boost, you went low compression as it just was the safest bet. Well, nowadays with the benefit of better fuel like E85 and better tuning, running low compression for superchargers or turbochargers isn't as essential as it used to be back in the day. So what's going to be the right compression for you? Well, ultimately I would ask your tuner what he prefers because there are some differing opinions on that matter. Lower compression means you'll have to run a little bit more boost and a little bit more timing to make up for that lower cylinder pressure. Now, depending on your forced induction choice, this may lead to a little bit more heat as you would have to spin a positive displacement blower a bit harder to make up for that extra boost. However, a lower compression ratio would also leave some room for error in the event that pump gas is used frequently, as detonation would be a little less likely given that lower compression ratio. Higher compression just simply means you can make more power but with less boost. However, the room for error on pump gas would be a little bit less. So in summary here, guys, your compression choice really just depends on your setup, your power goals, and the fuel that you plan on running. So that's why I really recommend getting with your tuner before pulling the trigger on a particular engine. Switching gears to the install, and let's keep this one brief, guys. A full 3 out of 3 wrenches on the difficulty meter here is what to expect, and at least a day or two, maybe just a solid weekend in the garage to get the stock engine pulled, everything transferred over, and then dropped back into your S550 again. Certainly not the hardest job in the world, but it will test the novice wrenchers out there for sure. But wrapping this one up, guys, if you're after a factory-produced built engine complete with a fully forged rotating assembly and ready to handle some big power, be sure to check out the 9.5 to 1 Aluminator right here at AmericanMuscle.com.